of the Teaching of Abraham. Foreword by Neale Donald Waltz, the best-selling author of the Conversation with God series and Home with God in a Life That Never Ends. This is it. Here they are. You don't have to go any farther, but all the other books down, unrolled from all the workshops and seminars. Enter your life coach. You won't need to be calling anymore, because this is it. Everything you need to know about life and how to make it work. Here they are. All the rules of the road for this extraordinary journey. All the tools which to create the experience you always wanted. You don't have to go any farther than where you are right now. Indeed, look at you've done already. Just look. Right now, look at what you're holding in your hands. You did that. You put this book right here, right where it is, right in front of your eyes. You manifested it out of the clear blue sky. That alone is all the evidence you need that this book works. Do you understand? No, don't jump over this. It's important that you really hear this. I'm telling you that you are holding in your hands the best proof you could ever give yourself that the law of attraction is real, is effective, and produces physical outcomes in the real world. Let me explain. Somewhere in the deep reaches of your consciousness, somewhere in unimportant places in your mind, you set an intention to receive this message, or this book would never have found its way to you. This is no small thing here. This is a big deal. Believe me, it's a big deal, because you are about to create exactly what you set your intention to create, a major change in your life. That was your intention, wasn't it? Of course it was. What is occurring as you read this word should be happening. If you hadn't placed your attention on a deep desire to live your day-to-day experience to a new level, you've wanted to do this for a long time. Your only question have been, how? What are the rules? What are the tools? Well, here they are. You asked for them, you got them. And that's what's a very first rule, by the way. What you ask for, you get it. But there's more to it than that. Lots more. And that's what this extraordinary book is about. Here you're not going to given some pretty amazing tools, but instruction on how to use them. Have you ever wished that life came with an instruction books? Hey, good wishing. Now it does. We have Esther and Jerry Hicks to thanks for that. And of course, Abraham. They will not tell you all about who that is, the fascinating, accelerating text to follow. Esther and Jerry were devoted their life to enjoy of sharing the wondrous messages that Abraham has given them. I admire and love them so much for this, and I'm so grateful, for they are truly extraordinary people and a gracious mission to bring glory to the mission upon which we all have embarked, the living and the experience of the glory of life itself, and who we really are. I know that you will be so impressed and so blessed by what you find here. I know that reading this book will produce turning about in your life. Here is an only description of the word important law of the universe, the only one you ever need to know about, really, but an easy to understand explanation of the mechanics of life. This is a breathtaking information. This is monumental data. This is a brilliant flashing insight. There are so many few books about witches. I would say what I am going to say next. Read every word here and do everything this book says. It answers all the questions you have eagerly asked by your heart. So may this direct pay attention. This book is about how to pay attention, and if you pay attention to how pay attention, your every intention can be made manifest in your reality, and that will change your life forever. Prefaced. The groundbreaking the ground the ground introduction. We've written this book to introduce you to a universal law and practical process that will guide you and clearly and precisely to the realization of your national state of well-being. Your reading of this book will give you the unique and beneficial experience of hearing precisely powerful answer to questions that I've accumulated from a lifetime of asking. And your successful utilization of this joy-based philosophy of practical spirituality will also help you guide others to living whatever they would consider to be the perfect life. Many have indicated to me that my question, in many ways, have mirrored their own, and so, as you experience the clarity and brilliance of Abraham's answer, not only will you likely begin to feel a true satisfaction that long-asked questions have been answered, but you discover, as we have, a renewed enthusiasm for your own life experience. And as you, from your fresh new outlook on life, begin to apply the practical processes that are offered here, you've discovered that you can deliberately create for yourself anything that you wanted to do or or have. It seems to me that my life, from as far as I can remember, produced a stream of seemingly never-ending questions to which I wasn't able to find satisfactory answers, for I have strongly wanted to discover a philosophy of life that was based on the absolute truth. But once Abraham came into our life, our experience, revealing to Esther and me their explanation of powerful law of the universe, coupled with effective process that help us to turn ideology and theory in practical result, I came to realize that the steady stream of books, teachers, and life experience that I did encounter on my path were the perfect step along the way to the discovery of Abraham. I like thinking about the opportunity that you now have as you read this book to discover for yourself the value of what Abraham's offered, because I know how this teaching have enhanced our life experience. I also aware that you would not now be holding this book in your hands if your life experience has not prepared as you for receiving this information. I feel an eagerness for you to dive into this book to discover the simple and powerful laws and practical processes that Abraham offers, so that you may begin to deliberately attract into your experience everything that you desire, and so that you may release anything from your experience and that you don't want. A steady stream of religious group. My parents were religious people, so I don't really understand why it was that I felt such powerful compulsion to find a church and become involved in the tenet of its religion. But it was a powerful force within me as I was growing up. Maybe it was an attempt to fill the very real void that I felt deep inside, or maybe it was because so many others around me were demonstrating their religious fervor for their certainty that they had discovered truth. During my first 14 years, I live in the 18 homes in 6 states, so I have the opportunity to evaluate a wide variety of philosophies. In any case, I systematically march myself into church after church, each time hoping with all my heart that inside this door I would find that I was looking for. But as I moved from one religious or philosophical group to another, my disappointment grew as they each exclaimed the rightness at the same time, declaring all the other wrong. And in this environment, with my heart sinking again and again, I knew that I had found the answer I was looking for. It was only after discovering the teaching of Abraham that I've been able to come to understand and to no longer feel negative emotion about those apparent philosophical contradiction, and so my search for answer continued. Even though I never had any personal experience with Ouija board, I did nevertheless have strong negative opinion about it. I believe that it was at best only a game that think and grow rich. Perhaps the first experience of actually finding practical answer to my growing list of questions came to me in the discovery of fascinating book while I was doing concert in series of college and universities in 1965. The book was lying on the coffee table in the lobby of a small motel somewhere in Montana, and I remember a contradiction formulating within me as I held it, and I looked at the word on the front of cover, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hills. This title was off-putting to me, for I, like so many other, and have been taught to shore up my negative impression of rich people as justification for my own lack of easily acquired resources. There was something undeniably compelling about this book, true, and after I'd gotten only about 12 pages into it, the hair was standing up all over my body and thrill bumps were rippling up and down my spine. We've now come to understand that these physical, visceral sensations are confirming evidence that we're currently on the path of something of extreme value. But even then, I felt that this book awakened within me the knowledge that my thoughts are important and that my life experience somehow reflect the content of my thoughts. The book was compelling and interesting, and it inspired desire within me to attempt to follow the suggestions that were offered. And I did. Utilizing the teaching worked so well for me, in fact, that it's a very brief amount of time I was able to build a multinational business, giving me the opportunity to touch the lives of thousands of people in the meaningful way. I even began teaching the principles that I was learning, but although I had personally received incredibly value from Napoleon Hill life-changing book, many of the lives of these I was teaching weren't as dramatically improved as mine, and I have been no longer how many courses they took, so my search for more specific question I answered continued. Seth speak about creating your reality. While my lifelong quest to discover meaningful answer to my questions is still persisted, and my desire to find a way to help others more effectively achieve their goal and loom larger than ever before, I was temporarily distracted from all of that by the new life that I, Esther and I were making together in Phoenix, Arizona. We were married in 1980 after knowing day after wonderful day, exploring our new city, making our new home, and discovering our new life together. And while Esther didn't exactly share my thirst for knowledge or my hunger for answer, she was eager about life, always happy and very nice to, to be with me. One day, while passing time in a library, I spotted a book entitled Set Speak by Jane Roberts, and it seems that before I could extract the book from the shelf, I felt my hair standing on the end again, and my body was again covered in thrill bumps. I lived through the pages of this book, wondering that if could if it could possibly contain that could be responsible for my emotion response. During the time that Esther and I had been together, I had discovered only one point of the contention between us. She didn't want to hear about my Ouija board experience, whether I would launch into what I considered to be an extremely entertaining account. Esther would leave the room. She'd been taught during her childhood to have tremendous fear of anything that wasn't physical, and since I didn't want to disturb her, I stopped telling those stories, at least while she was around. So wasn't really surprised to me that Esther didn't want to hear about the book Set Speaks either. Author Jane Roberts would go into a sort of trance and allow Seth and non-physical personality to speak through her in order to dictate the series of highly influential Seth books. I found the work to be stimulating and fascinating, and I began to see an avenue to some of the answer to my long list of questions. But as Esther was frightened by the book. Her discomfort surfaced immediately upon hearing of the manners in which the book had been written, and was powerfully compounded when she viewed the strange-looking picture on the back of the book of Jane in trance speaking for Seth. You can read the book if you want to. My fears were resolved. I thought it was both very wise and very kind of Jerry not to push the set book at me, because I really did felt a strong aversion to them. The whole idea of a person being in contact with non-physical being made me extremely uncomfortable. So, since Jerry didn't want to disturb me, he would get up early in the morning, and while I was still asleep, he read those books to himself. Gradually, when he finds something that was particularly interesting to him, he would gently slip it into the conversation, and I could only often hear the value of the idea. Bit by bit, Jerry introduced another concept and another until I began to feel true interest in those amazing works. Eventually, it became our morning ritual. We would sit together and Jerry would read to me from set book. The fears weren't grounded in any negative personal experience, but from hearsay. I'll pick it up, probably from others who would also pick it up from hearsay. Looking back, it now seems utterly illogical that I had those fears. In any event, I experienced a real change in attitude once I realized that as far as personal experience was concerned, it all felt good. As time passed and as my fear of Jane's process in the receiving of the information from subsided, I began to feel immense appreciation for those wonderful books. In fact, we were here happily involved in what we were reading that we thought we would take a trip to New York to meet Jane and her husband Robert, and even Seth. How far I had come into that now. I actually wanted to meet this non-physical being, but the author's phone number was unpublished, so we didn't know each exactly what to do to the next accomplishment for this meeting. One day we were eating lunch in a little cafe next to the bookstore in Scottsdale, Arizona, and Jerry was leafing through new books we've just purchased when a stranger who was sitting nearby asked, "Have you read any of the set books?" He would he could we could hardly believe that we were reading, because we haven't told a single person that would be reading those books. Then a man asked again, "Did you know that Jane Roberts is dead?" I remember my eyes filling with tears as the impact of this word washed over me. It was as if someone had told me my sister was dead and I hadn't known about it. It was shocking. We felt so much disappointed as we realized that now there would be no possible way for us to meet Jane and Robs or Seth. Sheila channels Theo. Within a day or so of our hearing about Jane's death, our friends and business associate Nancy and her husband Wes met us for dinner. "We have a tape we want you to hear," Nancy said, pushing a cassette into my hand. "Our friend's behavior seems awkward to me. There was just something odd about it. In fact, I feel the same feeling coming from them that I felt from Jerry upon his discovery of Seth's book. It was as if they had a secret that they wanted to share, but we're worried about how we'd respond when it was shared." "What is it?" we asked. "It's channeled," Nancy whispered. I don't believe that either Jerry or I had ever heard the words channeled offered in that context. "What do you mean channeled?" I asked, as Nancy and Wes offered their brief and somewhat disjointed explanation. Both Jerry and I realized that they were describing the same process by which the set books have been written. "Her name is Sheila," they continued, "and she speaks for an entity named Theo. She's coming to Phoenix, and you can make an appointment to talk with her if you want to." We decided to make an appointment, and I can still remember how excited we were. We met in a beautiful Frank Lloyd Wright design home in Phoenix. It was a broad daylight, and to my relief, nothing even remotely spooky happened. Everything was very comfortable and pleasant. As we sat and visited with Theo, well, I should say, as Jerry visited with Theo, I don't think I was worried during that meeting. I was absolutely amazed. Jerry had a notebook full of questions. Once he said he saved up since she was 6 years old. He was so excited asking question from after questions, sometimes interrupting in the middle of an answer so that we could get one more questions in before our time was up. The half hour passed so quickly and we felt so wonderful. "Can we come back tomorrow?" I asked because how I was developing a list of questions that I wanted to ask Theo. Should I meditate? When we went back the next day, I asked Theo through Sheila that we could move faster toward our goal. Theo said, "Affirmation," and then gave me a wonderful one. "I, Esther Hicks, see me and draw me through divine love, those beings who seek enlightenment through my process. The sharing will elevate us both now." Jerry and I were about affirmations. Jerry and I knew about affirmations. We were already using them, and then I asked what else. Theo replied, "Meditate." Well, I didn't personally know anybody who was meditating, but the whole idea of it felt strange to me. It wasn't something that I could see myself doing. Jerry said he associated it with people being how bad their lives could become, how much pain or poverty they would take, and it still exists. In my mind, meditation belonged into the same weird category as walking on hot coal or lying on beds of nails or standing on one foot all day holding your hands out asking for donation. But then I asked Theo, "Well, what do you mean by meditate?" Theo responds, "For 15 minutes each day, sitting in a quiet room, wear comfortable clothing and focus on your breathing, and as your mind wanders, and it will just release the thoughts and focus back on your breathing." I thought, well, that doesn't sound so weird. I asked if I should bring our 14 years old daughter Tracy to meet Theo, and the response was, It is her asking, but it's not necessary for you to our channels. I remember how impulsively it seemed that something as strange as being channeled or as significant as being one could have not been known by us before now. And then the tape recorded click off, indicating that once again our time was up. I couldn't believe how fast the time was passed, and so I looked down, and my list is still unanswered question. Stevie and friends of Sheila was operating the tape recording and taking notes during our conversation with Theo. Perhaps noticed my mild frustration because she asked, "Do you have one last question? Would you like to know that the name of our spiritual guide?" That was not a question that would have occurred to me because I have never heard the term spiritual guide, but I asked the sounds of such things, so I said, "Yes, who is my spiritual guide?" Tayo said, "We are told it will be given to you directly. You will be an clairaudient experience and you will know." We left that beautiful house that day feeling better than we ever remembered. Theo had encountered us to meditate together because you are compatible. It will be more powerful, and so, following Theo's suggestion, we went directly home, put on our bathrobe, our most comfortable clothing, closed the drape in the living room, and sat in the intention of meditating whenever that meant. I remember thinking, I'm going to meditate every day for 15 minutes. I'm going to find out the name of my spiritual guide. It felt odd for Jerry and me to be doing this strange thing together. So we sat in a large wing-box chair with this entanger between us so we could see each other. Something began breathing me. Theo's instruction on the process of meditating had been very brief. For 15 minutes each day, we sat in a quiet room wearing comfortable clothes and focus on your breathing. And as your mind wander, and it will, just release the thought of focus back on your breathing. So we set a timer for 15 minutes and settled back into my large comfortable chair and focused on my breathing. I began counting my breath in out. Almost immediately, I began to feel a sort of numbness come over me. It was an extremely pleasant sensation. I like it. The timer sounded and startled me. As I regained my awareness of Jerry and the room, I exclaimed, "Let's do it again." We set a timer for another 15 minutes, and again I felt that wonderful feelings of detachment or numbness. This time I could feel the chair breathing beneath me. It was as I were suspended there in the room and nothing else was there. So we set the time for another 15 minutes, and again I settled into this new delicious feeling of detachment, and then I felt the incredible sensation of being breathed. It was as if something powerful and loving was breathing the air into my lungs and then drawing the air back again out again. I realized now that it was my first powerful contact with Abraham, but at the same time all I knew that was that something more loving than anything I've experienced before was flowing through my entirely body. Jerry said that we heard a difference in the sound of my breathing. He had looked around and entrusted in me, and appeared to him that I was in a state of ecstasy. When the timer sounded and I began to regain my conscious awareness of my surroundings, that was a feeling of an energy moving through me unlike anything that I've never felt before. It was a most extraordinary experience of my lifetime, and my teeth buzzed, not chattered, but several times. That was an amazing sequence of events had led to this still rather unbelievable meeting with Abraham. Irrationally fears that I have carried with me my entire life, which had no actual basis in my own life experience, have been released and were replaced with the most loving and personal encounter with surge of energy. I never read anything that have given me any real understanding of what or who God was, but I knew that what I had experienced must surely just be that. Because of the powerful and emotional experience of our first attempt, we have decided to set aside 15 or 20 minutes every day to meditate. And so, for approximately 9 months, Jerry and I sat in our wing back chair, sit silently breathing and feeling well-being. And then right before Thanksgiving of 1985, during period of meditation, I experienced something new. My head began moving very gently. It was very pleasant sensation in my state of detachment. I felt the sensation of that subtle movement. It was almost a feeling of flying. I didn't really think anything of it except that I knew I was doing it, and it was an extremely pleasant experience. My head moved like that for 2 or 3 days whenever we were meditating, and on the third day or so I realized that my head wasn't just meaninglessly moving around. I was actually spelling letters with my nose as it were written on a chalkboard. I explained in amazement, Jerry, I'm spelling the alphabet with my nose, with the conscious realization that something remarkable was happening, and that was someone was offering communication to me. Instant wave of thrill bumps began moving all through my body. Never become that movement or since I've experienced the intensity of such wonderful thrilling sensation rippling through my body. And then they spelled, I am Abraham, I'm your spiritual guide, I love you, I'm here to work with you. Jerry got this notebook and began recording everything that I was wordly translating with my nose. Letter by letter, Abraham began answering Jerry's question, and sometimes for hours at a time. We were so excited to have made contact with Abraham in their way. Abraham began to type the alphabet. It was somewhat slow and awkward means of communication, but Jerry was getting answer to his question, and the experience was absolutely exhilarating for both of us. So, for about 2 months, Jerry asked questions. Abraham answered by spelling out words by guiding the movement of my nose, and Jerry wrote everything down. And then one night, we were lying in bed, and my hand began to softly thump on Jerry's chest. It surprised me, and I explained to him that not me, it just be them. And then I felt strangely impulse to type. I went to my new typewriter and held my hands over the keyboard, and in the same way that my head been involved involuntary moving to spell out the letters in the air with my nose, my hands began to move across the keyboard of my typewriter. They were moving so rapidly with such a power that it was somewhat alarming to Jerry. He stood by ready to grab my hands if necessary because he didn't want my finger to be hurt. He said that they were moving so fast that he could barely see them, but there was nothing to be alarmed about. My finger touches every key many times before they began spelling the letter of the alphabet, and then they proceed to write nearly page of type I want to type, I want to type with no capitalization and no space between the words. Then my finger began typing a message slowly and methodically, asking what I go to the typewriter every day for 15 minutes, and so that's why we communicated for next 2 months. The typists become the speakers. The typist became the speaker. One day we were driving on the freeway in our small Cadillac Seville. On other side of us was a large 18-wheeler truck and trailer. This section of the freeway didn't seem to be banked properly, and as all three of us began making this sweeping turn at the same time, both trucks seemed to be crossing over into our lane. It appeared to us that we were about to be crushed by large by this large vehicle. In the midst of that intensity of emotion, Abraham began to speak. It felt my jaw tighten, not so different from the sensation of yawning, and then my mouth began to involuntarily form